Welcome to What a Creep, the show with Margot Donohue and Sonia Mansfield talking about creeps from the past to the present.
This is your quick guide to the biggest creeps, jerks, assholes, and losers, the best of the worst.
From two nice ladies who want the world to be a little less creepy.
Welcome back to What a Creep. This is Margot Donohue, and my cohort in creepitude, as always, is the amazing Sonia Mansfield. Hey, Sonia.
Hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend. Sorry for a little bit of a late drop with this. You and I both had just a crazy-ass week.
Yes. It's the week before the holidays.
Yes.
Things are getting a little bananas, so we needed a little extra time.
And the person I'm talking about today is very, very newsworthy.
Yes.
Just in case you're new to us, we are the show that talks about creeps from the past to the present. We pick a creep, and then the other one picks a non-creep to talk about, so you don't leave feeling completely empty about the world. The guy we're talking about today is a real... Well, we'll get to that. You can follow us on Facebook. We do have a basic Facebook page. That's where people go to complain about our language. We use salty language in this program.
Fuck yeah.
If you want to interact with us more, we have a private Facebook group. You do have to answer a few questions. You have to act like not an asshole, and you can join us in the Facebook group, and that's where we hang out. So you just type in What a Creep podcast group, answer 3 questions. One of them being that you have to promise not to be an asshole. Also, we are on Twitter, as long as Twitter still exists, at CreepPod, because somebody had What a Creep for 10 years on Twitter and never used it.
Creep. That person's probably a bot. Can we have that now? Jesus.
Let's talk to our friend Elon. By the way, we've done an episode on Elon Musk. We might have to do a part 2 because
seriously,
yikes, what's been going on in the last few weeks with him. We're on Instagram, What a Creep Podcast, and our email is whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like some stickers, ask us. Just send us your email wherever you are in the world. We will send you some stickers. We had a few people requesting stickers this week, so look out for that, y'all. And Sonia, do you want to tell them about the website?
Yes, you can go to whatacreeppodcast.com, and it's everything you ever wanted to know about our show, but we're afraid to ask.
Everything?
Everything.
Shit, I was
Everything.
afraid.
If you have questions that aren't being answered by the website, please email us, and I will add it to the website. There are links to all of our episodes, and all of our episodes, if you click in, you can find our show notes, because every single episode is sourced. We're not making the shit up. We don't pull it out of our ass. We want to give credit to the journalists that do the dirty work. So
even if the journalist is a shithead that we're covering.
Right. Sometimes journalists aren't awesome about covering other journalists, but Margot has show notes. You can find them there. There's also a link to our merch shop. You can get t-shirts and face masks and journals and tote bags and all kinds of awesome shit with our logo on it. You should do that. And there's also a link to our Patreon page. You want to tell them about that, Margot?
Patreon. We have 5 seasons worth of episodes there. When we first started our show, Bill Clinton's there, Bill Cosby's there, all the Bills.
All the Bills.
All the Johns that are terrible. Lots of shitheads are there. So Patreon. We also put out 2 bonus episodes a month. We will get 2 of them out to you this month. And then we put out a newsletter normally for December. We're sending out Christmas cards to everyone. Sonia's double checking the list. Thank you all for checking in with us. We really appreciate that.
I'm checking it twice.
Exactly.
I'm gonna find out who's naughty or nice.
You should probably talk about astrology, like the year for 2023 in the next newsletter.
That's a good idea.
Because
good call.
We put out a newsletter as well, and we really appreciate it. I want to just say hello to KL, Lynn, Heather, and Tracy, who all joined recently. We totally appreciate it. Also, we want to say, look, if money's tight and that's not going to happen for you, we totally understand. We're cool. Just, wherever you get your podcast, subscribe, leave a review, leave a few stars. And if you're on iTunes, please leave a few stars and also a nice review. I want to say hi to Paige at CS, who left us who left us a 5-star review. saying that she can't understand why people are upset that we haven't covered Bill Clinton when we have covered Bill Clinton. Also, when it comes to presidents, we're waiting, and sometimes we wait till the news story is over. We wait till the person is out of office, the head office. Yes, we did cover Ted Cruz. We've covered a couple of other politicians still in office, but presidents we're going to leave because you really can tell more when they're done.
Yes.
You could tell the fuller story. So all you Joe Biden heads out there that are like itching, just cool your jets. It may or may happen not to. That's the thing. It's our fucking show.
It's our show. We do what we want. We do what we want here.
We do what we want. And we're independent and we just put the show together ourselves. If it's not your cup of tea, go have your tea someplace else, y'all. It's a big podcast world.
Go drink your weak ass tea somewhere
that
else.
tastes like a wet paper bag, according to Ted Lasso. All right. Do we have anything else to cover before we talk about our creep today? Sonia, this one is almost 20 years in the making. You're not going to believe this. This is personal. Like Jaws the Revenge, this one's personal.
Yes, like Jaws the Revenge. Our first Jaws the Revenge reference on this podcast ever.
Yes. Do you know who Matt Taibbi is?
Yes.
Okay.
I know of him, but not as well as you.
Well, what do you know about him?
He's a prick.
Well, he's a famous journalist. He's about our age. He's been very successful in his career. And he has that style that's like Hunter S. Thompson, excuse me. I always say Tompkins, like Paul F. Tompkins, but it's Hunter S. Thompson. And it's that radical, loud, big dick to the wall and nail your dick in the dirt and energy. Like that's what he likes to do. And lots of people liked him because, people who are on the left of the spectrum, because he was really like going after Goldman Sachs, going after politicians and Congress that was doing jack shit, and really, and wrote for Rolling Stone for years. And he was on Rachel Maddow's show. He's been on Bill Maher a bunch of times. He does all the podcasts. He has his own podcast now, but he had one called Useful Idiots, which was very popular. He has a Substack, which is, I'm still not sure what that is. I think it's just a newsletter you pay for. Yeah. And people are getting rich from it. I mean, good for you. A place where smart writers can make money.
Sure.
Because freelance money is not, you can't live on that shit nowadays.
No, you have to hustle.
They send you checks, and I'm like, I might as well floss my teeth with this because it's not even worth the time it takes to deposit in the bank.
No, they don't. A lot of places don't like to pay for content.
That's the problem.
Well, I don't even like to use the word content. They don't want to pay for your work.
Exactly. And people are so used to, and I'll get to this. It's like I worked in magazines. People are so used to watching TV or getting a magazine, and there's an ad. You either look at the ad or you don't look at the ad, right?
Right.
But if there's a lot of them, it means somebody's supporting the magazine, which means the journalists get paid. So you don't have, you know what I mean? So there was that. So people don't really have that in them to think like, well, why do I have to pay for this? Why is this important? But it is.
Yes.
Which is press.
Which is why we pay for we use our Patreon money to pay for subscriptions to a lot of the news sources.
Including Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Which is, who he used to write for, including Washington Post. I mean, all of them, because we want to make sure people get paid, like Sonia says. Lately, since Trump has been in office, it's kind of going more on the right side of things. And people are kind of like, what's going on with Matt Taibbi? And now he's in this whole Twitter dump thing, which it just happened. There's only so much we can say about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and also Hunter Biden's laptop and his dick pics and his drug use. Wait till we have more news. Okay. We'll decide.
Yeah.
How bad he is when we get more evidence. But anyway.
Right. But having an addiction doesn't make you
an addiction and dick pics don't. I mean, there are a lot of people. We would never have time to not do this show if that was all the criteria was. Democrats with dick pics, like that would take all, please.
Yes.
So anyway, this is my long drawn out way of saying that I had an interaction with Matt Taibbi it's either 2003 or 4. I was working for YM Magazine, which was a teen girls magazine.
Yes.
He called me demanding to speak to my editor-in-chief. He was very belligerent and shitty. And he worked for a free weekly newspaper called the New York Press. I had a week and a half. This is before everything was online or easy. It was in print. And I had to wait like a week and a half to see what he wrote. And then he said some shitty stuff about me. Every once in a while, I got hassled for it. Nothing too bad. Compared to how he talks about other people, I got off easy. And this is his thing. He likes pranks. He also just thinks his job as a journalist is like, I have an idea for a story. Everyone needs to give me their information. And there's no thinking of like old-fashioned gumshoe work, like,
Yes.
wooing people and kind of getting your contacts. And that's not there for him. Like he's very much an opinionated person.
Is it like gotcha journalism?
Very much. Yes.
Okay.
It fucking got to me. Like he got me,
Yeah.
and he lied. He's a liar. I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
He fucking lied about me. So when other people say he lied about them when he puts their quotes in his stories, I could tell you, yeah, that tracks. That fucking tracks. Okay. So let me read this quick intro, and then we'll get into the story about Matt Taibbi.
Okay, and I just want to say, you come for Margot, you come for me. I'll cut you.
That's why we're friends.
That's right.
You fuck with one of us, you're fucking with the both of us.
That's right.
Fuck around, find out. That's my motto for 2023.
One of us is the fuck around and the other one is the find out.
Yep. Matt Taibbi is a journalist who has been described as a firebrand and whose writing is reminiscent of Gonzo-style writer Hunter S. Jesus. Thompson. Ay, ay, ay. Worshipped by white boys since the 1960s. In the 1990s, Taibbi helped uncover corruption in Moscow with the paper The Exile, which he wrote with former friend and super duper creep Mark Ames. We'll probably have to talk about him one day. Wait for that, Sonia. Mm-hmm. As a New York-based freelancer, he went from a mouthy opinion writer, became a mouthy opinion writer for the alternative weekly New York Press, and then from there he went to Rolling Stone, winning several awards for excellence in reporting. Featured everywhere from Rachel Maddow's show on NBC, Bill Maher on HBO, Late Night with Seth Meyers, Daily Show. Many people on the left like to claim him as theirs, who spoke the truth with bravado. And also he had several best-selling books. And he wrote about the financial shenanigans of Goldman Sachs, the idiocy of Congress. He's followed several book campaigns. One of them I'll show you. He followed the 2004 campaign, and it was called Spanking the Donkey.
That poor donkey.
He's a pretty funny writer sometimes. Somewhere around 2016, he started realizing that he's like, the media is dividing Americans. He has a popular Substack and rakes in millions just from that. And this is the dream of any writer. But he seems now to have switched from fighting the power and fighting corruption to fawning over billionaires and power-mad lunatics like Vladimir Putin. He doesn't think Putin invaded Ukraine.
Cool.
Right.
There's pretty strong evidence that he has, but okay.
I think so,
sure.
but okay. He now writes about Trump being a victim of the press.
LOL.
And that people hate him for no real reason. Recently, he was a part of the big Twitter reveal with former past creep. Once again, he is in that episode's evergreen. It's always going to be there, Elon Musk.
Yes.
Because we have to have an Elon Musk there.
He is garbage.
He also spoke out against white privilege. He spoke out against a lot of trans. He thinks Matt Walsh, who did the anti-trans movie, is hilarious. So what did he?
Power does corrupt people.
Power
and
corrupts people.
Clearly, that is what happened here.
Why does he feel like a victim of woke culture? We will get into that today. I also talk to you about, I had an encounter with him and his shitty journalism. He maligned me in a column, and this is the funny thing. It was from the New York Press, which doesn't exist anymore, and it went out of business years ago. Turns out it was bought by somebody else, and they put all of his old articles there. So I did some digging around, and I found the article that he wrote, and that he called me and demanded to speak to my editor-in-chief on a late Friday afternoon. We'll get into more of those details, but fuck this guy. So we'll read from that, okay?
All right.
Trigger warnings, drug use, and sexual assault. These are my sources. Hang on. New York Magazine, 2021. Washington Post, another Washington Post. Twitter feed from Jill Filipovich. Yahoo News, Matt Taibbi's Wikipedia, Matt Taibbi's Substack. The Hill, his book, Hate Inc., his book, Insane Clown President, his book, The Great Derangement. I didn't read them all, but I read through them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
The book, Mark Ames and Matt Taibbi, The Exile Story, Sex, Drugs, and Libel in the New Russia. Jack Dorsey on Twitter, Newsweek, Rolling Stone, Huffington Post, Chicago Reader, 2 of those, A Web in the Archives, Vanity Fair, The New York Observer, and The New York Press. So I've done a bit of research. I also went on YouTube and saw him with a bunch of interviews, one of them being with Ben Shapiro, who he just explained to him how the left has no sense of humor. It's the right people that are really funny right now. And Ben Shapiro does this. Yes, you're right. You're right. Because he's such a dweeb.
That's ridiculous, but okay.
Matt Taibbi was born March 2nd, 1970s. I think that makes him a Pisces. He was adopted, and he was raised in Massachusetts. His father was a TV journalist, and then his parents split up, and he was basically raised by his mother. I think he has kind of a awkward, like a lot of people who go through a divorce home, they have an awkward relationship with their parents. It is what it is. He was very smart, but always kind of a troublemaker, always kind of a sourpuss. He's always like, a bit of a misanthrope.
Okay.
He goes to Bard College and then he goes to NYU, or was it the other way around? Anyway, he went to those universities, and he's very tall. And at one point he played for the Mongolian basketball team, and he was
random.
He was known as the Mongolian Rodman by the local press, and he has pictures to prove it.
Mongolian Rodman. All right.
Okay. So he eventually moves to Russia, and because he's sick of America. He thinks America's boring and journalism is boring in America.
We're so boring here. Boring.
And he partners up with a guy named Mark Ames, and they co-edit this English language, Moscow-based bi-weekly free newspaper called The Exile, and the X is like capitalized and everything else.
Yeah.
And they put out restaurant reviews. This is a time when Yeltsin was in charge, and people thought like there was more democracy happening in Russia than there actually was. The oligarchs were ripping people off left and right and stealing the money and all that stuff. And so he was writing about that, and so was Mark Ames. They were also doing a shitload of drugs. They both admit this. Ames would do just about anything you handed to him in a nightclub, and Taibbi had a heroin addiction. That was really, 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 really hard. They also brutally wrote about their encounters with women. They love to talk about Russian women and their big melon-sized tits, the way that you can't, women in Russia, and mainly this is Mark Ames. Let me say this. Mark Ames mainly is the person that starts a lot of the sexual stuff. He brags about how girls in Russia, like the age of consent is like 14, so you can get a 15-year-old. He has pictures of himself he's 34, taking his 15-year-old girlfriend to her prom.
Gross.
That you can do everything sex-wise there, and they don't care. You don't need to wear a condom. There's really not much difference between a sex worker and another woman in Russia. American women in Russia are gross. They hate American women. American women were ugly, were harpies. We're all like, no matter what age we are, we're just middle-aged harpies to them. And anybody who dares to go to Russia and say something like, boy, the women here seem kind of miserable. And by the way, they don't have I've read about this, like women giving birth in Russia, they have one baby and they're out because it's such a fucking miserable experience.
Oh, that sounds awful.
But what are you going to do? You're born where you're born and you try to make the best of it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stories in there about how they sexually harass their staff, the women on their staff, that it was hilarious. They love to play pranks. What are their pranks? And some of them are also
I'm sure they're
funny.
hilarious.
Well, I'm not the biggest prank person because some pranks are just, I mean, maybe it's 'cause being a chick. I don't know. But some of them were really funny. They would say like, Wilt Chamberlain's moving to Russia. Can you help set up a basketball team for him? And they would get people on the phone like, oh, sure, we'll do that for Wilt Chamberlain. And then like, it's not him. They also used to call reporters covering Russia, American reporters that were either based there or based here, but writing about Moscow, and they would just say horrible, shitty things because they didn't like their coverage. And everything was like, we don't like what they're doing, so we're just going to be real dicks about saying how much we don't like what they're doing. So they're the alternative. And they would say, there's one woman, her last name is Lally, that they just basically, he made up a conversation. He tried to get her on the phone, and they were pranking her, and they basically reprinted their prank, but she says they misquoted her from what they said to make her look more of an idiot. And it's been like embarrassed. And I'm saying, fucking yeah, I believe that they did because it happened to me. They wrote about going to clubs and having sex in the club and on the floor and having drugs everywhere. They were interviewed for a book called The Exile, Sex, Drugs, and Libel in the New Russia. And this was through Grove Press, and this came out in 2000. So this is all in the 90s, like just a few years.
Yeah.
And they were sent to America to do publicity for this book. This book that they said was nonfiction. This is all based on their reporting. They just take each person, and they take turns with every chapter. Taibbi would speak one, and then Ames would speak one, blah, blah, blah. And Taibbi was more like, yeah, man, you can get anal from Russian chicks so easy. They wear short skirts. Taibbi, not as much, but he also doesn't stop it. And they both insult women left and right, like just constantly. There's one reporter who's a guy that they hated, and they actually took the Washington Post, and they took a pie, and they filled some they filled it with some horse semen and put it in the pie and then smacked it in the guy's face. Like, that's a prank to them.
That's gross.
These
guys are
disgusting.
Gross.
So they're doing these interviews in support of this book, and they're like, "Buh, New York is boring. Russia's better. The chicks are better." Ames, by the way, is from San Jose. I went to San Jose State. This tracks. He's saying, like, women in the Bay Area don't know how to flirt. They don't know how to have sex. They wouldn't pay attention to me. But I go to Russia.
They
I'm
have
an American.
standards.
That's right.
I hate it when chicks have standards, man. It's the fucking worst.
And in these interviews, and one of them, they say they're just doing drugs right in front of the reporter. They're like snorting speed and all this stuff. So some of it could be drug, alcohol, haze, but you're also, I think, highlighting your true personality or your true intentions, like what you really want to say. So,
I mean, there's a reason they want to be with 14-year-old girls, right? It's
because they're fascinated by men.
Yeah, they
and
don't
the
want
older
to be
guy pays attention to you. You're like, oh, this is flattering. What's happening right now? Versus,
they don't want to be challenged.
They don't want to be challenged. You're right. So they break up as friends. Matt comes back to the United States. He tries writing a weekly paper up in Buffalo, New York. Doesn't really go anywhere. He comes back to New York City. He writes for The Nation, Playboy, and then he starts writing for the New York Press. And this is when he calls me. And this is, like I said, 2003 or 4. I can't really remember the exact date. But I'm at my desk, and I'm new to the job, and I was the PR person for YM Fitness and Child magazines. And so what I did was reporters call, and it could be everything from the New York Times has an op-ed about bulimia and girls, and YM magazine really took seriously our audience. My editor, Christina, was the first editor to say we're not doing diet stories in this magazine. And we're going to cover trauma. We're going to cover, like, we loved our listeners and our readers. And most of them were very young. Like, it's like 12, 13, 14 years old. That's usually the age that they are. So we really understood, like, they're kind of aiming for teenager, but it's really more of a preteen audience.
Got it.
And we took it very seriously. When there was an election, we sent teen reporters to the convention. We were very serious. This is my point. we were very protective of our readers. And this guy calls up, and it's late on a Friday afternoon in New York in the summer. Late on a Friday afternoon, you don't call for a story. Like, unless it's a breaking news story. I mean, nowadays it feels like you do, but normally you just don't, because you're not going to get much coverage. It's not going to last through the weekend.
No, and it's when you want a story to like die, basically, is when you try to bury it.
It's like when a celebrity is going to get divorced. I could tell you.
Yes.
July 4th weekend's a great time. Yes. Between Christmas and New Year's, Memorial Day weekend's a great time. Yeah. That's when you want to bury that. It's not when you when I get a hit, but it's on a Friday, I tend to be like, it's fine, but it's better to get it earlier. So this guy calls and he's like, "Hi, I'm Matt Taibbi," and I'm paraphrasing because I didn't record it. "Hey, yeah, I'm trying to reach your editor for YM Magazine. I want to ask her why her editors they work with advertisers that hate girls." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Why do they hate their readers so much? Do you even care about your readers that are less attractive having to buy expensive products from your magazine?" And I just sat there. I'm not processing what he's saying.
Yeah.
And he says, "I really need to talk to your editor about, like, does she really care about her readers or not?" And I muttered, "That's a loaded question."
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have, because nothing's off the record, really. I mean, but I said,
in your defense, it is a loaded question.
It's a loaded question. I mean, it's when did you stop beating your wife kind of thing, right?
Yes,
it's just not.
Exactly.
So I said, "Well, you have to email me." I don't want to email you. I've been trying to get in touch with your editor. I'm calling everybody's desk at YM. Nobody's answering. And I said, "It's Friday. They're gone for the weekend, or they're busy." And I said, "If you email me and it's important," and I didn't know what I said. And I'm like, "Who are you with? What is this story? What's it about?" That's my job. So that my editor in chief doesn't pick up the phone and get
right.
And it's everything from that to like, we're Good Morning America. We would want to do a fashion segment. My job is to make all that happen so they don't have to worry about it,
Yes.
And my editor-in-chief got a lot of shit when she did her "let's not do diet stories anymore," because there were people that were just, I don't know, because people are assholes. And she...
Yeah. Well, no, teenagers are going to get fat.
Yeah. They were just like, "Don't you care about their health?" Or what, it was something like that. And I loved her very much, but she wasn't the best interview. She was a little stiff. So she needed like me to kind of work things with her. I'm sorry, Christina, if you hear this, but she knows. Anyway, he's badgering me. "Well, I tried this person. I tried that person." Like, "Okay, fine. I'll email you. But what's your cell number?" I'm like, "I'm not giving you my cell number." And I hang up with him. And then I call my boss, who's like heading out to the Hamptons with her husband and kids. And she says, "Donahue, that's your first time being a spokesperson. That happens. You did right.
Yeah.
You handled it as professionally as you could." She goes, "Don't worry about it. Just call Christina, make sure she's okay and everything." So I call my editor and she's fine. She goes, "Yeah, he was bugging everybody at their desks. I kind of just hid from him." And she says, "I'm sorry you had to deal with it." Anyway, so a week and a half later, this article comes out and everybody's really upset at YM. They're like, "We want to call. We want to write letter to the editor." I'm like, "Forget about it. Nobody cares." I will get to the article in a second because I was like, "Oh, this guy was just a shithead." Anyway, of course, he fails right upward and goes to Rolling Stone right after this.
Yes.
Like within a year, he's at Rolling Stone. He gets like front cover articles. I'm
Dang.
like, motherfucker. And he's hugely popular. And once again, he's their Paul F. Tompkins? No, they're Hunter S. Thompson of the 2000s. And they flippin' love him. And he writes all these stories. He gets National Magazine Awards. He's a big fucking deal. He gets book deals. And he's handsome-ish. He has the life. Not my type, but he does things like when Andrew Breitbart died. Remember Andrew Breitbart?
Yeah.
He wrote an obituary where he wrote for Rolling Stone, "Andrew Breitbart, death of a douche," which he's not wrong. And then, he also did the same thing when Ted Kennedy died, wrote something like that. And
You called him a douche?
no, but it was along those lines.
Yeah.
Also, not that wrong. But
Correct.
And he's writing all these topics, like I said, and one of these, and they're all about like he's following elections and things like that. And in 2017, so 2010, excuse me, there's an interview, and because he's really getting popular, it's been 6 years, he's winning all these awards, and Vanity Fair magazine goes back, and they're like, is this the same guy from The Exile, that Russian paper that used to brag about having sex workers in the office and all this shit? And so the reporter buys the book off Amazon or whatever. It's in paperback, some cheap paperback, and flips through it. And it is repulsive what these guys did. It is fucking terrible. Once again, I have all the links there. He calls Matt Taibbi. Taibbi won't answer the phone, doesn't know why he wants to interview him. He's really upset. He gets very defensive. Not so fun, is it, Matt?
No. How dare you call me on a Friday afternoon and demand quotes?
I need a quote now. The reporter's like, let's go out to lunch. I'm going to do a story about this. I want to hear your side. Which is the proper, and this is what my favorite boss always said when it comes to coverage. She said, I want it to be fair and I want it to be accurate. If it's that, I can handle it. You know, fair, sure. That's maybe a wobbly term, but I agree with that. So this reporter is saying, we're going to do a story. It's going to come out in a few months. I'm going to do my research. Meet me for lunch. And Taibbi's going back and forth. And then he finally shows up and agrees to it. And the reporter shows up late. He doesn't say how late he was, which is... So Taibbi is already in a bad mood. And he starts questioning him about, what did you write when you were there? Do you take any of this back? You know, you're married now. Like, what? You know, how do you feel about women? Taibbi throws a fucking fit, throws his coffee in this guy's face, and storms out of the restaurant.
Damn.
And then they leave the restaurant, and the guy's trying to reason with him, and Taibbi won't have it. So then the guy turns around to go back to his office 4 Times Square, and all of a sudden it appears like he's following Matt Taibbi, but he's not. He's just trying to go back to his office. But Taibbi's like, and very tall, like I said, and really threatening this guy, like, what the fuck are you doing? You're following me, aren't you? And just screaming and just acting like a total goddamn lunatic. This article comes out. Doesn't change anything. Like, he's still book deals.
Right.
This is back when people read Vanity Fair. Like, but okay. So he still writes books, still appears on TV. He's getting more and more famous. And then he writes a book called I Can't Breathe in 2017. And it's about Eric Garner in Staten Island, who was choked to death by a police officer over cigarettes.
Yeah, it's so fucked up.
It's super fucked up. So this is about on the left, right? He's trying to write the story about power and police forces being, killing people and that kind of stuff. And this is around, when it's published, it's also around the Me Too movement. So reporters are kind of going, hey, you know that guy that you're talking like he's the big savior, white savior of people and fighting for the little guy? He's a sexist shithead. And they start going back to the old stories. And one woman in particular says, he printed an interview that he said a conversation that we had. She goes, he made it up. This is not true. And I was stalked for years over this. And Taibbi actually says, I'm sorry. You know, I was younger then. I had drug problems. I don't use that language now. This is not who I am.
Yeah.
Also, just so everybody knows, everything at The Exile was satire. None of it was real. So him and Mark Ames are back in the media, and they both go, it was satire. It was satire. We weren't really doing those things. We weren't really doing any of that. Their copyright says it's nonfiction.
Right.
I mean...
So, apologizing, great. Lying. Not great.
Not great. And he's starting to get... He says that it's all satire, so none of it is real. So none of it really happened, so you can't be mad at him. But it's not really working because people are kind of like,
Yeah.
And this is when he starts to question why Donald Trump and this Russiagate thing is happening. Because I used to live in Russia, and I know what happens over there. And if this were true, this person would be dead. And he's questioning that. And then there's a book that comes out called White Fragility, which was very popular in the media. It's a woman who writes about how she's a corporate person. She goes to companies and helps them be less racist. Let's be clear. Like her whole thing is like, how can we make this so everybody feels included? of course,
About diversity and inclusion.
words that set certain people on fire. Like they're just so annoyed by
Yeah.
the very possibility of that. And so he
Right.
starts railing against white fragility, that it's bullshit, it's horse shit. Who the fuck is this woman? Nobody, what are businesses paying for nowadays? Who the fuck is she? Like super aggressive, misogynistic, racist, I say.
Yeah.
It's like, no, none of it's real. What are you all talking about? Just being
Yeah.
a total fucking dick.
Yeah, there's so many. This is the same with Elon Musk. Like, they start, like, Elon Musk has always been a creep, so maybe this isn't a good example, but like, there are definite, like, people who, when they feel like they're being called out on their bullshit, and maybe they were more left or progressive or whatever, and they get called on their bullshit, like a Louis C.K. That's the
Right.
good one.
That's a good
or
one.
or a Dave Chappelle. Instead of like admitting they were wrong, looking within, making changes, they just turn and they run towards the people that are fine with their shit, right? So it's like running to the right and being like, well, the right accepts. And I'm trying to be careful. It's not all right. Like,
Not all men, Sonia.
not all men. An audience that is more willing to be like, I don't care that you said fucked up shit about women. I'm
Right.
fine with that. And that's how they find their people, and then they just double down, and they just draw their line in the sand, and they're like, this is it. Like, I'm fully fascist now because they accept me for being a racist, sexist prick or whatever.
Or they're
and that's-
anti-woke. Wokeism
Yes.
is making me angry and racist. Wokeism is really pissing me
Yeah.
off. And
Yes.
it's like Bill Maher and Chappelle, like you said,
Yes.
and they all say the same thing. I didn't change. The world changed. I didn't change. And it's like, you're supposed to change. Like,
You're supposed to change.
you're supposed to. It's okay. Everything in life can change, and everything changes. Like,
Yes.
you don't hear them using the F word to talk about gay people on stage. Just the word lesbian was a punchline for years. And it's the laziest, stupidest, homophobic thing ever. Do you remember, like, there used to be this joke, the joke about New York City cab drivers, and oh my God, Sonia, some of them speak a foreign language, and they're talking in that foreign language on a phone, and I don't understand it. Like, you're in New York. Like,
What?
And how is this bothering you? Like,
Yeah, I just can't imagine saying the world has changed and I haven't, so the world is wrong.
it's narcissism. You're being myopic.
That's your hill.
Yes.
Like, people. Anyway.
That's been his thing. So, like I said, he's a cancel culture warrior now, and he hangs out with people like Barry Weiss and Andrew Sullivan and Glenn Greenwald and Ben Shapiro. That charming, hilarious comedian, Matt Walsh.
That makes me so dry.
It's totally, I'm dry as the Sahara here, as I said. It's always whining about wokeism, and that's like really bothering. Because for years, he got to say whatever the fuck he wanted, and everyone congratulated him, gave him an attaboy, so he can't understand what's going on. Last year, there was a movie released, or within the last year, it was called What is a Woman? And it's hilarious. Matt Walsh, talking about transgender issues. This is their new hill. It's drag queens and transgender women are a problem. It's just disgusting. Yeah, he's been doing that. And then recently he was asked by Elon Musk, who took over Twitter this year. Him and Barry Weiss were given unfettered access to internal documents. 75% of the workforce was fired there. They haven't paid their rent.
Not good.
It's like Trump there. They don't pay their rent.
They haven't they haven't paid their vendors. Like, it's a thing, and that headquarters is here where I live. So there's definitely a ripple effect around here of a lot of people lost their jobs.
A lot of people. Yeah. They're real people. I mean, that's like the thing, like Elon Musk went on stage with Dave Chappelle and was booed. And by the way, fuck those people. He's such a baby. And what was Chappelle thinking? What was he thinking? Just like, a rich guy's in the room. Yay! Like, no.
I'm like, Dave Chappelle of 15 years ago would be horrified by Dave Chappelle today to bring Elon Musk on. And then Elon Musk was very, very, very booed. And
yes.
By the way, it's and he's like, oh, the woke crowd. It's yeah, the woke crowd was at the Chappelle show. Eye roll. But then he sends out his tweet that's it was 90% cheers. I'm like, fuck off.
He's so
we could
silly.
see the video, dude.
Yeah.
We could see the anyway. Bleh.
So he hires Barry Weiss, who's on our list. We'll definitely have to talk about her someday. Ugh. And him. And so they're flown to San Francisco. They say they weren't paid.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, CEOs don't give that kind of access to anybody. It's just not normal. And they went through emails, but it's also you have to ask yourself, why is this person giving me all this information? What do they want me to write? Yeah. What do they expect of this exchange? They're flown to San Francisco. They're there for several days, 12-hour days, looking through emails and all this stuff. And they do these Twitter dumps, and Rolling Stone has been totally trolling Matt Taibbi. This is a nothing burger. This is somebody who used to work here. We're shocked how lame this is. It's just, he's saying things like the FBI doesn't even hunt sex offenders anymore. They're just worried about social media. I'm like, first of all, sex offenders use social media. But also, that's not fucking true. They can work on several things at once.
Correct. Yes. They're a pretty big department. Yeah. It's not five. It's not five dudes sitting around reading tweets all day. That's not what's happening here.
No. So this is where it was going to end. And then yesterday, I was looking up this old article. And are you ready for it?
Yep.
He calls on a Friday afternoon and berates me to speak to my editor-in-chief because it's really important to get a quote from her for this particular story. Ahem.
Yes.
The limits of YM imagination. Jesus Christ, he's so stupid. Okay. Wednesday night, upstate New York, zooming through a supermarket aisle, I'm looking for some kind of vegetable, but a magazine rack catches my eye. New issue of 17 on sale. The cover is a teeny-looking chick in a red strappy skirt and a blazing back-to-school issue banner. And then there's this teaser near the bottom of the page. Shoes Plus, with a closet full of shoes, page 188. I grabbed the magazine, hey Max, and flipped greedily to page 188. My shopping cart adrift away on its own momentum. What? I have a thing for the teeny girl mags. It's not what you think. There's nothing in the world less sexual than a 17 or a YM. They're straight terror trips, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He talks about girls and one of them being she raises her hand in class and the boys soccer playing next door smells her gamey underarms. Dancing on stage, her leotard rips and her boobs are visible to everyone, which of course makes everyone laugh. All is very consciously emphasized. Both the 17 and YM have trauma sections. So he starts saying that he's reading this article saying this, and it's not there. I don't know what he's talking about. In between it all, the pages are filled with perfect celluloid celebrities who stare with blistering permanent indictment. They are terrifying faces. I'm a grown man and can defend myself, but I've had nightmares about the Olsen twins. Okay. And I get off on it.
He thinks he's hilarious.
And I get off on it. If you use these magazines right, they shock your senses back to health. And for days afterward, you feel a warm rush all over your body as the blood cautiously returns to your limbs. It's a lot like jumping into the freezing ocean and in the dead of winter, which is yet another dangerous thing I do once a year.
What?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Now, the thing about these magazines, Sonia, they include ads. Did you know that?
What?
It will take you, if you do this right, it'll take you at least an hour just to reach the table of contents. It took me 90 minutes with this YM this week. You're really fucking dumb if you can't read ads for teenagers.
Most of us read that shit waiting for the dentist, so it doesn't take us 90 minutes. But okay, do go on.
He writes about, meanwhile, in YM magazine, readers are invited to write in the letters section after you finish your Romeo and Juliet essay. And later on, there's a diagnostic quiz that asks It's the Spark Notes. Anyway. Then they talk about different kinds of drama, like that girls happen. They write to magazines and they're like, I'm having an issue with this or I'm having an issue with that. They have quizzes. Are you a big fat cheater? 5 ways to fake totally flawless skin. And a Colgate ad on a cheat sheet. He's talking about the ads and some of the stories. He says, by the way, I make it a point to enter every contest giveaway, to put myself in the running for every conceivable product offered. Caboodle organizers, Clearly Cool tote bags, Smackers Splash and Shine lip gloss, a chance for a private shopping spree with the Warner Brothers recording artist everything for my home and hallway makeout needs. This is time consuming. There are dozens of contests at each magazine, and it can take a full 2 hours to fill out all the forms, but it has to be done. He doesn't do this. It's not funny, and it's just, what is this?
Also, it doesn't have to be done, but okay.
He also writes a pretend letter to YM. Dear YM, sometimes I feel so icky at school, I want to shoot everyone in sight with my father's Chinese-made SKS Type 5.56 rifle. Is there a base concealer combination I can use that won't make my eyes feel so cakey? This is wrong and I should be discouraged. But remember, this is their turf. That doesn't mean you can't ask the occasional question. I called Margot Donahue, publicist for Gruner & Jahr's USA Publishing, which publishes YM. Do you think, I asked, that there's a place in the world for physically unattractive girls or girls without enough money to buy nice clothes or cosmetics? Is there any other conceivable answer to that question but yes? But she laughed and said, that sounds like a loaded question. You're going to have to send that to me and I'll direct it to the proper person. We discussed the whole email protocol when I interrupted her. I guess the question should have been, if you think there's a place in the world for people like that, why aren't they in your magazine? I can't answer that, she said. I'm just the publicist. Right, which means it's exactly your job to answer that. No, it's not. You're just going to have to send me that request. Look, I said, I'm on a deadline. You're a human being, right? Long pause. Right.
Yes, I'm sure that question was real hard for you.
And then he wrote, then don't you have a personal opinion? I said, no. No, I don't. Right, of course not. We sure lit some sick people near our kids. Meaning me.
Fuck that guy.
Okay.
He's fucking trash.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the kind of article that he was writing. That's the way he feels about women. He had just this whole savior thing about, this is how I feel about, teen girls. They need somebody like me to speak up for them. They can't do it for themselves and the women won't do it. I have to do it. That's his whole thing after writing all this weird shit about girls right before that.
And just like to make up like the interaction and the context for your conversation just to like fit his own narrative.
Well, that's what he does.
Is fucking lazy and not ethical to be like, it's just not ethical.
No,
it's lazy.
And that's who's been in the news. That's the person doing that Twitter dump files thing that everyone and all these people are going, dudes, I used to be such a big fan of Matt Taibbi. He's really blah, blah, blah. Change. I'm like, no, this is him. This is him.
Dude hasn't changed at all.
No.
And that's the problem.
He's a big fucking weirdo. He has real issues with women. He doesn't treat them with respect. And he's entitled.
Yeah.
And he's a dick.
He's a dick.
That's our creep this week.
What a dick.
Right?
Yes.
And don't let me near your
back
children.
To the original name. Yeah. Back to the original name of this podcast. Seriously, fuck that guy.
Yeah. That was going to be the name. Yeah. I'm glad we changed it.
Yeah, but we decided to go. I mean, it would look great on merch, but
Everyone that I know that uses the F word in their show like regrets it because it is kind of a pain in the ass to get around it. So
I know.
But anyway,
but still.
Yeah, he's a total asshole and there you go.
What a creep.
Right?
Good job. Good job, Margot.
Thank you.
He's a piece of shit.
He's a piece of shit.
And honestly, like we could like we could update that episode. We could update this episode like every day.
Well, I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, Sonia. I mean, I'm interrupting you just to say, like, you were a journalist.
Yeah.
I have to ask, is that okay what he did? Is that like normal? Like, is that how you get a source? That's how you file your stories?
He called you to get a quote from the person who actually makes these decisions at the magazine.
Right.
And when he didn't get that person, he decided to use quotes from you, and he made up the context to it to make it look like it was a gotcha. And again, it was to deflect from the fact that he actually didn't get to talk to the person he needed to talk to write this story.
Right.
Or could have written it and said, YM declined to comment, or they didn't return my calls, or whatever.
Right.
But he didn't want that. He didn't want that. He wanted a gotcha.
He wanted to humiliate somebody.
Yeah, and that's not journalism. That's not telling the story. He didn't he clearly thought he was on. He made up a bullshit reason, made it sound like he was doing good work here. Like, I'm just asking questions here.
Mm-hmm.
But then didn't get any answers, and so made one up. He's a creep. And he's lazy. That's fucking lazy.
It's super goddamn lazy and entitled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seriously, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear about someone who's not a creep?
Please.
Okay. Do you know who Barbara Ehrenreich is?
No.
Okay. I think you might recognize some of her work, but she is a journalist. She wrote for Mother Jones, Time, The Nation, New York Times, Washington Post, Salon, Vogue. She's written for everything. That's my point. She's also an author who wrote 21 books. Her best known book is 2001's Nickel and Dimed.
Oh, yeah.
On not getting by in America. It was for 3 months. She worked a series of minimum wage jobs. She usually wrote about like overlooked, forgotten people, like the myth of the American dream, like healthcare in America, poverty, labor, women's rights. She died this past September at 81, where she had a stroke. 81, not bad.
No.
But she was born as Barbara Alexander on August 26, 1941 in Butte, Montana. Her mother was a homemaker, and her father worked as a copper miner, and then later got his PhD in metallurgy. Is that how you pronounce it? Mm-hmm. At Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and he actually became director of research at Gillette.
Jesus.
I know. Fascinating to me. She studied physics and chemistry at Reed College. She graduated in 1963. She got a PhD at Rockefeller University in cellular immunology.
Ooh.
Sorry, everyone. You know how much I suck at big words. So after that, she got a job as a budget analyst for New York City, and then she worked for a New York-based nonprofit called the Health Policy Advisory Center. And then she was working as like an assistant professor at the health science program at the State University of New York. But she, like everything in the 60s and like early 70s was obviously like there was a lot of political upheaval going on. Yeah, y'all might have heard of it, civil rights, women's rights, Vietnam. So she really wanted to write. And her first book was called Long March, Short Spring, The Student Uprising at Home and Abroad. And it was about like anti-Vietnam War activism. She wrote another one called The American Health Empire, Power, Politics, and Profits. And she just continued to write these books. And these are, they're journalists that like are putting themselves in it. She actually does the research. She actually asks the question. She walks the walk. Mm-hmm. Like she's not making shit up, let's just say. So, she did one about the hearts of men, American dreams, and the flight from commitment The Fear of Falling, The Inner Life of the Middle Class, The Worst Years of Our Lives, Irreverent Notes from a Decade of Greed that came out in 90, so it's about the 80s. Like, she wrote the good shit. Like, she wrote about the good fight. So in 2001, she writes Nickel and Dimed, and that book was huge. Like, and if you've never heard of it, like, you could check it out. There's other like podcasts that do episodes about it too. And basically she worked like a series of jobs. So she worked as a waitress, a housekeeper. She worked at Walmart as a greeter and tried to pay her rent living on minimum wage. And what she found was it was impossible. She's like, you couldn't work one of these jobs and pay to live in America. You had to work at least 2 jobs. It was a big deal, and it is something that people point to get higher wages. And she continued to do this kind of work. So she did immersive journalism. That's the word I'm looking for. It's immersive journalism. So she also did one called Bait and Switch about the pursuit of the American dream. And this one I'm actually thinking I need to read. It's called Smile or Die. And it's about the dangers of positive thinking.
Oh, yeah. I think I heard about that one. I need to read that.
Yeah. Because
Toxic positivity.
Yes. I have a lot of that I direct at myself, not others, just at myself. I'm thinking about reading that. And she wrote for everyone, New York Times, Washington Post, all kinds of stuff. And she, on top of writing these stories, she also like tried to address the issues. So she created something called the Economic Hardship Reporting Project. And it was about it was not just for her to like tell other people's stories, but for people to be able to tell their own stories. So it focused on helping the work of underrepresented people get their stories published, and getting paid for it, which is a thing. She was the founder of the National Women's Health Network. She worked for the National Abortion Rights Action League, the National Mental Health Consumer Self-Help Clearinghouse. I mean, there's a million of these. Here's one based in Brooklyn called the Association for Union Democracy. She worked for like writers unions, women's writers unions. It's awesome shit. Like Campaign for America's Future, National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Like she does the shit.
She's a badass.
Yeah, she is. In 2018, she wrote a book called Natural Causes, and it was about growing old and like the wellness movement here in this country. Her most recent book was 2020, and it was called Had I Known, and it was like a collection of essays. So it was like sexism, health, economy, science, religion, all kinds of stuff. And then like she was writing until the day she died, and she was working on a book about like the evolution of narcissism, which I bet would have been an amazing book.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I don't know if like she made a lot of progress and maybe somebody would like to finish it, because I bet it was really, really good. And I just think that she was a good contrast to who you were talking about. Like, this is someone who legitimately wanted to shed light on like fucked up, unnecessary pain. Like in this country, in the world, but specifically in this country, a lot of these things tie back to the like idea of the American dream that we're sold, that if we like work hard, we'll be rewarded, and with homes and love and healthcare and all these things that we're not rewarded with when we work hard. Like, it's just this carrot they dangle in front of us.
And somebody was saying, I was reading somebody's Twitter post where they were talking about toxic positivity, and they're doing that whole thing like, what if you worked your ass off at every area of your life, you know, full time, like 120%, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And one of the comments was like, that becomes base level. People get used to that, and then they don't want any less. and then you burn yourself the fuck out and you have no time for yourself and you're doing all these things for what reason?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought that's our non-creep. It's Barbara. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing it right. Ehrenreich.
Nice. Thanks, Sonia.
You're welcome.
That was awesome. You know what else is awesome?
What?
Us. We have
Yeah,
another show.
duh.
It's called Dorking Out, where we dork out about movies. The next episode's going to be
Home Alone.
Home Alone. We're going to talk about Home Alone, the old chestnut. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, filthy animals. We'll be talking
filthy
about
animal.
that. We're talking about that next. If you've had any suggestions for creeps and non-creeps, follow us at all the places I mentioned at the top of the show. We love it when you use the Annie Pat's GIF. We got one from Ghostbusters. And Sonia, where can they find you?
You can find me at thesoniashow.com and The Sonia Show on Twitter, Instagram, the TikTok, Hive Social.
Have you been diving into Hive?
Not really.
Yeah, neither.
But you could find me there just in case Twitter implodes. I want to make sure we're set up on the other stuff. I downloaded Post News or something. I don't know. Anyway, you could find me on all the things. Where can people find you, Margot?
You can find me at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Twitter and Instagram. My site is brooklynfitchick.com. And I'm also on the TikTok at my name, Margot Donahue. Thank you all so much. We're going to still be putting out episodes.
Yes.
We'll be putting out our bonus eps. And we hope you all have a safe holiday season. Be good. Be kind. Don't be a creep.
Be a creep.
Thank you for listening to us talk about creeps. You can follow us at What a Creep Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
But don't follow us too closely.
You can email us your creepy stories at whatacreeppodcast@gmail.com.
But please keep your dick pics to yourself.